tyre inserts, the unsung hero of the mountain bike, vanquisher of punctures, saviour of wheels? Or are they just extra weight and extra faff? In the world of downhill and enduro, they're pretty commonplace, with the weight not really being an issue and the added security being nothing but a bonus. But the people in the cross-country world are starting to use them as well. That's right, even those weight-conscious, lycra-clad lovelies, including myself in XC, are starting to use them a lot more too. So today we're going to do a little bit of experimenting. We're going to try inserts myself, front and rear, on this bike, start to drop some pressures and see just how much difference it really does make. Right, before we dive on into the video, why not show us a little bit of love by liking and subscribing? Get active in those comments down below and let me know what you think of inserts. Do you use them? Don't you use them? Thoughts and feelings, please, people. All right, let's crack on. What is a tyre insert or tyre liner? What are they? Well, it's essentially a round piece of foam that sits inside the tyre and kind of acts as a barrier between the rim and the top of the tyre. Now, they're generally made of foam, but not just any old foam. They're not like pool noodle or some kind of foam you'd find in your cushions. Oh no. They are in fact made of something called closed cell foam. Now, this is done so because it doesn't absorb any moisture, liquids or sealant or anything like that. And it's actually far better for this kind of application than an open cell foam. It's also much tougher and more durable as well. They fill up the void inside the tyre, partially sort of making a barrier, if you like, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So what are the main reasons that we would use an insert? Well, there's a few. Protect from punctures, protect our rims from damage, and to run lower pressures for kind of better grip and control. So let's dive into those a little bit more. A tyre insert then acts as a barrier between the tyre and the rim. So effectively, when you hit a square edge bump, it stops that tyre from compressing all the way and pinching against the rim, causing damage to the tyre. This is especially beneficial running an insert if you are someone who runs lower pressures. Having that sort of added bonus of a protection is going to stop either damaging the top of the tyre, or if you had no inserts, pinching the sidewalls as well, which can be an absolute game over for your ride. So as I've previously touched on, they help protect your tyres to a certain degree, but actually most of all they help protect your rims as well from any sharp edges, clanging on rocks, things like that, or particularly hefty landing. Essentially, the foam compresses, as you can see it kind of does here, and what that does is stop the tyre hitting straight down onto the rim, damaging the rim, be it carbon or metal. I've actually taken inserts out from EWS races I've done in the past where there's been all sorts of gouge marks, chunks missing outside of the insert, but absolutely no damage to the wheel. If I didn't have that insert in, it would definitely be a game over for that race. Inserts can actually act as like a run flat system as well. Now what I mean by this is if you are still unfortunate enough to get a puncture, something like this can actually help you get home or finish a race run. How that actually works is it means the volume or some of the volume of the tyre is still taken up. So you can ride that wheel or ride that tyre and wheel combo, if you like, back to the car park, end of a race run. And not only that, it's gonna help hold the bead of the tyre in place as well. So you ever see those people sort of snaking around because the back tyre is moving loads when the front is moving loads when they do have a puncture. This can actually help avoid that as well. Now this is one of the biggest talking points these days, is that actually inserts can improve handling and grip. And it can do this in a number of ways. This is essentially achieved by adding extra structural support to the tyre, giving the rider better stability and control. Now, where this is going to make a huge difference is especially if you're quite an aggressive rider, it's going to not sort of let the tyre roll and deform so much, especially when really pushing it into corners or hammering it through those really gnarly sections. It does this by pushing essentially out and up on the tyre. So what an insert is doing, whilst you're just rolling around is one, it's kind of helping lock the bead in place around the bottom of the tyre. So when you are hammering it, when you're leaning that tyre over, it has a tendency to deform like this, either left or to the right. What the insert's doing is pushing out on the bead, holding it nicely in place. It's also then pushing up and out on the sidewalls as well, stopping those from rolling quite so much and deforming under a lot of load. Now, inserts are also going to give you some kind of damping properties. What does that mean? Think of your tyres like your suspension. You have a volume of air in there, but if you put something in that takes up some of that space, it changes the characteristics of how it compresses. Think of it this way, the larger the insert you have in your tyre, the more damping you kind of have. It's like adding more tokens to your suspension. It firms up a lot quicker. So, for example, on my cross-country bike here, if I was to run one of the biggest inserts that Vittoria make, well, then the tyre's not going to squish or compress much before hitting that insert. This can be good and bad. Ideally, you would want a little bit of space because what it means is you're not actually allowing, if that insert's really big, you're not actually allowing that tyre to mold and conform and compress over stuff. It's more going to deflect than anything. So you do need a certain kind of sweet spot, a balance if you like. That's why the shape and size of the liner is so important. So on that note then, not all inserts are created equal, and they're certainly not all created of the same size. Now here on the channel, we're sponsored by Vittoria, and they make a wide range of inserts, everything from kind of gravel shaped all the way up to big gnarly e-bike ones. And you can kind of see, although they look very similar in some ways, they're very different in others. Obviously, for the smaller tyres of the gravel world and the different kind of hits that it takes, it's a much sort of slimmer profile. The big bad boy e-bike one here is a denser foam. It's a much bigger sort of size to take up the volume. But what are the more common ones we use in the mountain bike world? Starting off at the burly end of the scale, let's take a look at some of the key points of a sort of downhill and enduro focused insert. You can see the shape of this insert slightly different. A T shape that sits deeper into the rim and helps keep the bead nicely in place. The side sections help press against the sidewalls and give that sidewall stability and puncture protection we mentioned before. The biggest difference here is the flatter profile, giving the biggest air volume possible. This uses a higher density foam for the best protection. The Downhill Protect insert is that little bit thicker to give you maximum security. What if sort of trail riding and smashing is your thing? You want the protection, but you don't want to carry around a lot of weight. Well, here is how the trail ones are different. These then are the trail airliners, and they sit as a middle ground between the heavy-duty downhill inserts and the lightweight XC inserts. They still have a dense foam to help with impact protection and tyre stability, but don't add too much weight. The size and material help dampen any trail buzz, which is great for those longer days on the bike. And last but by no means least then, the XC insert, and kind of the one we're most interested in today. So let's check them out in greater detail. These little beauties use a slightly lower density foam to help make them around 100 grams lighter than the downhill insert, but still offer good protection and stability. Vittoria claim actually on these that if you get a puncture while using these inserts, the foam will expand and help provide more support, helping their athletes get back to the tech zone, should we say, much faster than if they got a puncture without an insert. Well, whilst we're on the subject of cross-country then, back in the day, racers would jack up the tyre pressures to try and stove off any kind of punctures. These days, with tracks getting wilder, bikes being more capable and racers being gnarlier, well, racers are actually running pressures as low as 15, 16 PSI, but not really worrying about the weight penalty of using an insert because they'd rather have the security. But is it just a fad? Is it all talk? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's an experiment. I'm at the top of a black run, we're going to start dropping pressures, and let's see how we go. So run number one, to set a little baseline in kind of thoughts and feelings, I've got my Orbea Ois, Vittoria XC race tyres, Mezcal Barzo combo. We're running my stock pressures at 23 on the rear, 21 PSI on the front, and I've got Vittoria airliners front and rear as well. Let's give her a hammer on down, then we'll drop the pressures. Let's go. Okay, hell of a run, but do you know what? Nothing too unexpected there. It's what I run kind of all the time, so it felt comfortable. It didn't really squirm, it didn't ding or anything. I had no big nasty compressions. So kind of boring, but kind of not, to be expected. Now I think we need to make things a little bit interesting and drop it down 5 PSI front and rear and see if that's maybe a little bit too much and go from there. The pressures are set, 18 PSI in the back, 16 up front. Just for reference, I'm about 90 odd kilos kitted up. I'm riding this bike with the suspension fully unlocked, so let's do a run, see how she holds.
Work it, cannot hold, overflows, become one. Now work it, don't get stopped, let me see you pop at the barbershop. Work it, cannot hold, overflows, become one. Now work it, don't get stopped, let me see you pop.
Right then, that pressure there was kind of optimal on the way back up. The tyres were nice and soft in that they were deforming and sort of moulding around the obstacles going up and gripping really nicely. However, on the way down, there was a notable difference in terms of sort of squirming under pressures, especially in the big berms, you know, when you hit the compression of the takeoff, and like under braking felt pretty good. Going down even lower, I think, is a very high risk strategy, and going 5 PSI lower is certainly way too much. So we're not gonna go 5. I think if we drop it another 3 front and rear, that will be sort of on the limits, especially with my riding style. So you got to take that into consideration as well. I ride pretty hard, pretty wild on bikes. So going too soft is definitely not a thing for me. I'd actually go a bit firmer, but let's drop it down 3 each more, get this jacket off because it's flipping boiling, and do another run. Right. I'm nervous on this one. There's only one way to find out. Let's have it. Ooh, soft. Yo, whoa. Right. I've had to stop already. No way was I gonna be able to jump that safely or properly. As soon as I went to push into the takeoff, like push to then compress and pull out, both tires, and especially the front, just went and just rolled over. That would have ended very badly. There we go, drop. Ooh, no, I do not like the feeling of that. That sounds squishy. Over the roots, feel a little dong. Big squish. Oh, no thanks. Ooh. Oh my Lord. Okay, that's proving to be a little bit too lively for me at these pressures. I think we may have found just going a bit too low. So basically coming down there, I can feel tyres squirming in berms, tyres deforming up takeoffs, the odd ding where it's going through to sort of not the rim, but onto the insert down some of the rockier bits. I think we need to go back up a touch. I do think what I've learned from this though is actually with inserts, my previous pressures were a little too firm. I think 23.21 could be dropped down to 21.19 front and rear. I'm gonna try that at another date. This has been a bit too wild for my liking, but also some other sort of great talking points actually, I think, on this, is that we kind of need to touch on, and I wanna hear your thoughts in the comments down below. By adding an insert, we obviously add a little bit more weight. Does that really matter when it comes to cross country? I'm not so sure when it comes to track, but also we do have to add additional sealant that's often recommended by manufacturers. So you are adding a little bit more. Some people do like the feeling of an undamped tyre as well, as in, you know, no insert in there and you've just got the full squish, if you like. And last but not least, obviously, you have got the faff factor, as I call it, of actually taking them in and out, especially if you swap tyres regularly. Insert your comments down below. Let me know what you think when it comes to them. Do you have an optimal pressure? Did you not use them? Are you going to now? I want to hear your thoughts and feelings, people. But for me, for now, from Scotland, I'll see you later.